Ever wonder about the hidden costs behind, like, that shiny new gadget you just have to have? Or the app you can't stop scrolling?
Or like the subtle ways tech creeps into every corner of our lives.
Yeah, exactly. So today's deep dive, we're heading straight into the heart of it all, Silicon Valley.
Buckle up, because we're going deep, uncovering the not-so-pretty connections between groundbreaking innovation and, well, the consequences that have shaped the tech landscape we know today.
And we've got a real treat for you. We're diving into the Venture Alchemists.
Which, by the way, is an amazing read.
Oh, absolutely. It pulls no punches in revealing the ambition, the genius, and honestly, sometimes shocking choices made in the name of, progress.
It really highlights how intertwined everything is. I mean, figures you wouldn't expect spanning decades.
Right.
From the very birth of the semiconductor to the rise of those social media giants we all know, it's all woven together in this, intricate web.
Okay, so let's untangle this web a bit. The Venture Alchemists kicks off with the Traitors 8.
A legendary group.
Right. These guys defied the odds, and their former boss, no less, to form Fairchild Semiconductor.
Talk about a pivotal moment in Silicon Valley history. I mean, it all traces back to them.
It really does. But then there's William Shockley, the boss they left behind, Nobel Prize winner for his work on transistors, right?
Yeah, bona fide genius.
You'd think that's the whole story, but it takes a sharp turn. This guy, Shockley, dives headfirst into eugenics.
Yeah, that's where things get complicated. And we're not talking about some casual interest. This was full-on advocacy. While at Stanford, he was pushing for sterilization based on, get this, race and IQ.
Hold on, he actually got funding for this.
He did, which just goes to show, even back then, these issues were as much about money and power as they were about, twisted science.
It's a huge reality check. Throws that whole genius equals hero narrative right out the window. Like, brilliance doesn't automatically make you a good person.
It makes you think, how much has that push boundaries, no matter what ethos, really stuck around in Silicon Valley?
It's a question worth asking, especially as we move into the next chapter, the rise of social media.
The era of likes, shares, and never-ending connection. We're talking Facebook. And a lesser-known, but equally fascinating player, Catch-27.
A Catch-27. I have to admit, I'd never heard of it before reading this book.
Oh, you're in for a treat. It's like Facebook's cynical twin. They actually predated Facebook, but had all the same features: profiles, friends lists, status updates, the works.
So what's the catch?
Catch-27 was all about satire, like brutally honest satire. It exposed the dark underbelly of social media before social media was even really a thing.
Okay, I'm hooked. Give me an example.
Instead of listing your favorite things, Catch-27 asked users to name living human beings you really loathe.
No way.
Oh yeah. And instead of happiest memories, they wanted your most hideously humiliating social moment. It was like holding up a funhouse mirror to Facebook's whole connection and community facade.
They were way ahead of their time. It's eerie how much they got right, even if it was through satire.
They tapped into something real. And meanwhile, you have Mark Zuckerberg, laser-focused on growth, user privacy, not even on the radar.
It's a pattern we see again and again. A laser focus on the bottom line, even if it means, well, let's just say bending the rules.
Which brings us to a phrase that's practically become Silicon Valley's unofficial motto: move fast and break things.
And no company embodies that more than Uber.
Oh, Uber. Talk
Yeah.
about a wild ride.
Seriously, their story's got it all. Ambition, disruption, and a whole heap of controversy.
They completely upended the transportation industry. But the real question is, at what cost?
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting, because Uber, under Travis Kalanick, took move fast and break things to a whole new level.
Kalanick fostered this win-at-all-costs mentality. Rules were, let's just say, flexible. Boundaries were meant to be pushed. And it worked in terms of growth, but, well...
But there were some serious consequences. Like, what kind of consequences are we talking? Spill the tea.
Oh, where do we even start? I mean, you've got the whole God view thing, where they were tracking users, without breaking a sweat.
Yeah, that wasn't great for their image.
To put it mildly. And then there were the accusations of this, toxic work environment full of harassment and discrimination. It was constant bad press.
It's almost like they took that move fast and break things a bit too literally, right?
A little bit. But we're also talking about real human costs here. Let's not forget about the drivers.
You're right, they were kind of caught in the crosshairs of all this.
Totally. They were treated like cogs in the machine. Unstable wages, zero benefits. It set a dangerous precedent.
It makes you think about the true price of disruption, and this whole move fast and break things mentality. It's not just contained to Uber, is it?
Sadly, no. It's like it's seeped into the very groundwater of Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And even, dare I say, politics.
Oh, here we go. The part where tech and politics get all blurry.
Right. And no conversation about Silicon Valley's influence is complete without mentioning Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
This guy's a walking paradox. Early Facebook investor, huge Trump supporter,
Yeah, he's not afraid to ruffle some feathers.
to say the least. And remember that whole Gawker media situation? Bankrolling Hulk Hogan's lawsuit? It felt like a power play, silencing a critic.
It was a bold move. I mean, whatever you think of Gawker, you have to admit, it raised questions about, like, how much influence these tech billionaires should have.
Especially when it comes to shaping the narrative.
Right.
And Thiel's support for Trump, a very unconventional candidate, it was like he wanted to disrupt politics just as much as tech.
And he was vocal about it, too.
Oh yeah, and it gets even more interesting. Thiel has said some pretty controversial things about democracy itself.
Wait, really? Like, what do you mean?
I'm talking mildly anti-democracy kind
Yeah.
of statements. Which, paired with his support for Trump, who also, pushed those boundaries, it makes you wonder about Thiel's vision for the future.
It's like he's playing a different game altogether.
Totally. And here's a real head scratcher. This is also the same guy who warns about AI becoming essentially communist because of surveillance.
Wait, what? That's quite a jump. How does that even track?
Right, it's like he's simultaneously championing tech and terrified of it eroding the very freedoms he seems to hold dear,
Okay, so he's complicated.
to say the least. But that tension, that internal conflict, it speaks to a larger issue. The more we innovate, especially with AI, the more we bump up against these huge questions about privacy, surveillance, and even, the future of democracy.
It circles back to that unseen influence we were talking about. We tend to think of technology as this neutral thing.
Right, but it's not. It's built by people, funded by people.
People with opinions, agendas, and blind spots.
Exactly. The Venture Alchemist does a fantastic job of peeling back those layers, especially when it comes to venture capitalists. They're not just writing checks, they're shaping entire industries.
That's something that really struck me while reading this book. Their influence goes way beyond just the money.
Oh, absolutely. They're setting the culture, the values, the whole ethos of these companies, and more often than not, it's all about growth, disruption, and those sweet, sweet returns.
Which unfortunately often means ethics take a back seat.
It's the name of the game, right? Move fast and break things.
Yeah.
But the problem is, those broken things, sometimes they're people's lives.
And those consequences, they're not always immediate. Sometimes it takes years for the dust to settle and you see the real impact.
Exactly. We're talking about the erosion of privacy, the widening gap between the haves and have-nots, the spread of misinformation. Society itself is being reshaped.
So the big question is, where do we go from here? If the system itself is pushing this kind of reckless innovation, how do we even begin to course correct? It's like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? How do we actually make progress without, throwing ethics completely out the window?
It's the million-dollar question. And I don't think it's about stopping progress, but more about hitting the brakes and injecting some much-needed ethical awareness. We have to remember tech isn't some neutral force,
Right, it's built by people.
Exactly. And those people have their own values, their own biases.
The Venture Alchemists really drives that point home with William Shockley and his backer, Frederick Terman. Terman's hailed as, the father of Silicon Valley, but the guy had some seriously messed up views on eugenics.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, advocating for limiting reproductive rights based on, it's chilling.
It really is, and it makes you realize Silicon Valley's history, it's not all sunshine and roses.
Right. We can't just focus on the shiny gadgets and ignore the darker side of the people behind them.
And those darker impulses, they can linger, The book draws this really interesting parallel between Shockley and, get this, J.D. Vance.
No way. The hillbilly elegy guy.
The one and only. He wrote so powerfully about the struggles of the white working class. But then he goes and becomes a venture capitalist, even a politician, and starts echoing some of those same ideas about poverty and genetics that Shockley was pushing.
It's like this idea of inherent inferiority just keeps popping up.
In different disguises, right?
Exactly. And it shows why we can't just take anything at face value. We have to question these narratives, even when they come from, a sympathetic source.
So how do we do that? How do we become more discerning, more aware of the potential downsides, and more importantly, how do we demand better from these tech giants?
Education is a good place to start. We need to understand how this stuff works, who profits, and what the potential consequences are. We've got to be willing to talk about those trade-offs we're making.
It's a tough conversation to have. But the Venture Alchemists, at least it offers some potential solutions too, right?
Oh, absolutely. For me, the biggest takeaway is regulation. We can't just rely on these companies to do the right thing. We need rules, accountability.
Otherwise, it's just the Wild West out there.
Exactly. And it's not just about, like, top-down control. We, as individuals, have to make more informed choices.
Yeah.
What are we letting into our lives? What data are we giving away? And are we demanding transparency from these companies?
I have more power than we think, right?
Absolutely. We vote with our wallets every day.
So much to think about. This deep dive has taken us everywhere, from eugenics to Uber, from venture capitalists to AI.
It's been a ride. But that's the thing about tech, it touches every aspect of our lives.
It does, and the choices we make now, they're shaping the future, for better or for worse. So to our listener, the next time you open that app, scroll through your feed, or get your hands on the latest gadget,
Take a moment.
really think about those hidden costs, the people behind the curtain, and ask yourself, what kind of future are you helping to create? Because the future of tech isn't some predetermined thing. We're writing it every day with the choices we make.